The following is brought to you by Bleacher Report. If you guys want to check out my live post-game reaction show, make sure to have the Bleacher Report app downloaded and ready to fire up right after the game. You'll find me in the Chargers section. Bolt up.
Well. Can I get a bolt up in the chat today, man? Hey, we got one, baby. The Chargers will end up winning their first preseason game of this year, 26-19 over the Dallas Cowboys. And how we did it, man, is so impressive. Can we just go straight to the elephant in the room to start this broadcast off, man? Tony freaking Jefferson turning back the clock, going backwards in time to his Pro Bowl days with the Baltimore Ravens, putting up some ridiculous statage in one of the most crazy single, player performance I've ever seen in the preseason for a defensive player, man. Wow. Tony Jefferson, 14 tackles, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Are you kidding me? Tony Jefferson, if you were looking to make the 53, if you are looking to make an impact for this team, if you are looking to be that guy the Chargers trust when Derwin James is moving around on that defense, dude, I think you just did it. Because that is one of the single-handed most impressive displays I've ever seen from a defensive player, even in a preseason game, man. Absolutely insane. How's it going, everybody? It's the Director. We're here to talk about this win for the Chargers over the Dallas Cowboys. That showed us a lot of good things, if you are a fan of the Chargers, of what to expect rolling into the regular season. A lot of competition all over the roster, fighting for positions or fighting for spots on the 53, and a lot of it's going to come to the surface because of the performances that we saw in this game. Of course, this upcoming week is going to be cut week, in which all NFL teams are going to have to trim those rosters down, and the Chargers are not going to have an easy situation on their hands with a lot of the performances we saw this week, man. Some really awesome defensive performances, but also an offense that really feels like found their footing in this game. Easton Stick, who's been more often than not a very underwhelming backup quarterback, did find a rhythm this week. I'm going to hear a lot of people say, "Nah, Director, we still want a different quarterback. We don't have a lot of faith in Easton Stick." Despite all of that, because again, I do agree with you, maybe the Chargers quarterback 2 situation isn't solidified after one good preseason performance. Easton Stick does deserve his flowers this week, though, as he did put up a much better fight in this week than he has the last 2 weeks combined. Easton Stick finally gives us a good look at the offense, and quite honestly, I'm a lot more relieved to see how they performed in this unit, in this game, than I have, again, in the previous 2 weeks. And if you guys are still looking for another name to add to the roster, another name to add to the competition for the Chargers backup quarterback, I would assume that with cut week, there's going to be some quarterbacks that enter the fold, and maybe the Chargers do pounce on 1 or 2 of them to add to the competition to see if there's maybe something a little bit better out there. Either way, though, we're out here to talk about a lot of the successes of this team, a lot of the accolades that they were able to accomplish in their last preseason effort before the regular season and cut week. Now let's go ahead and start things off with Easton Stick himself, okay? This man goes 12 of 29 for 187 yards, a touchdown, and he did rush for an additional 17 yards as well. You do have to add on top of that, though, the interception, which is going to bring him down a little bit. Now, when you take a look at those stats, QB rating of 60.6, definitely not great, but certainly better than what we've seen previous. I think Easton Stick, like I mentioned, gave me a good sample size of some of the dudes I really needed to see tonight, okay, on offense, in regards of Easton Stick and some of what he provided for sample size of other positions like running back and wide receiver. We saw a couple of really nice plays to a wide receiver that's really fighting for a roster spot this upcoming week in Simi Fehoko. Simi Fehoko is a guy that I felt maybe had an outsider's chance at making the roster because of the guys likely in front of him. In my speculation, it would have been Cornelius Johnson and Brendan Rice. Both of those guys, which had a couple of nice plays in this game. However, Brendan Rice, who in my opinion has been one of those camp guys, it's been absolutely amazing in camp and in the preseason, or I should say in training camp, did not have the most spectacular preseason outing that I've ever seen. As a matter of fact, it was rather underwhelming. And sure, a lot of the opportunities thrown his way maybe were a bit difficult thanks to, Easton Stick maybe throwing it, in double coverage, or there was really a guy on top of him that whole time. The fact of the matter is a lot of those catches, or a lot of those passes were catchable. Even though they were tough, they were still possible. And I don't think I ever saw one catch that was contested coming down in the hands of Brendan Rice, which is unfortunate. It's going to make his climb to the 53 a lot more difficult. Cornelius Johnson actually kind of looked a lot better than even Brendan Rice this week, catching a couple of tough balls, converting the Chargers a couple of times as well. Still, the man with the plan, the man that did elevate to the top, at least in my opinion, has been Simi Fehoko, who did bring in a huge touchdown off the 78-yard long catch all the way to the house, which displayed a lot of good things about him. For one, the speed is great. The body frame is great. The catching is great. He really did show why he may be the favorite to make the 53 at that point it'd be wide receiver 6, which is certainly pretty impressive to see, how far he's climbed. I think off the practice squad of the Cowboys last season, and now a pretty good contributing player to our special teams, and maybe even a depth wide receiver. Now, another wide receiver really did hit the ground running this week. First play for the Chargers offense goes to Darius Davis, the punt returner, on a trick play. What was it, an end around? He takes that thing all the way to the house to start this game off. And again, a couple of things to learn from that. For one, the hype meter was going crazy. Chargers fans had not seen a Chargers touchdown since the middle of last regular season. It had been a minute, right? The Easton Stick era, when he was playing in lieu of an injured Justin Herbert late last season, we did not see a lot of touchdowns, and it had been a long, long time since we had seen one. The way it went down with Darius Davis taking it all the way to the house on that handoff is absolutely crazy. And Chargers fans were certainly very happy and relieved to see that we have that kind of talent on offense, even if it's a guy like Darius Davis, who's probably not going to see the field a lot in terms of an offensive player. Maybe exactly the way that they showed him now, right, as the trick play, end around, whatever you want to call it. He made it happen. But more so, what gets me excited about that touchdown play is the fact that that's the kind of weapon that we have in our return game, which we were already excited about, right? We already knew that Darius Davis could be a dangerous weapon in the return game, but it's a different world that we live in now, right? It's a different environment when it comes to the return game in the NFL. Of course, the kickoff's looking a lot different. You're going to need some weapons back there. I would assume that with these new kickoffs, there's going to be even more opportunities for guys like Darius Davis to make an impact for their team on special teams. And in this case, what he showed us in terms of his speed, of his vision, I would especially say, and his ability to really hit, that space and take it all the way with that, elite speed, tells me that, hey, we have ourselves a really nice piece to not just our offense, but the special teams, in which he's going to make a pretty big impact this season. Very excited to see him get some action in the first game versus the Raiders on special teams. It's going to be awesome. All right. As far as the rest of the offense is concerned, there's a couple of other positions I do believe we're being very much so fought for in terms of a roster spot. Running back's going to be a big one. I think for the most part, you can take the top 3 and feel pretty good about it, right? Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Kamani Vidal feel like the top 3 dogs. Outside of that, I do think guys like Jarrett Patterson and Isaiah Spiller, even Elijah Dotson, we're all kind of fighting for a spot there. At this point, it really feels like Jarrett Patterson has won that RB4 role, which is going to push Elijah Dotson and even Isaiah Spiller to possibly the practice squad. As I don't know if Isaiah Spiller is going to make it very far or make it very long in the practice squad with the Chargers, but having that battle come down to Jarrett Patterson, Isaiah Spiller is certainly something that's interesting to me. Because at the top of the season, I really thought that Spiller was going to be that guy, special teams, receiving sort of back. But I do think Jarrett Patterson has overtaken him, and at this point, feels like the running back room feels pretty good to me. Outside of that, offensive line, we're going to have to go back and really watch some stuff to see how they perform, but it felt like a better outing this week. I know it might be crazy. There's a lot of, plays out there like, if the line held another second or two longer, maybe we convert. But trust me, in comparison to the previous 2 weeks, it really does feel like the offensive line stood up a little bit taller. We didn't see a tremendous collapse like we have the last couple of weeks from guys like, Foster Sorrell, Alex Leatherwood, Brendan Hymas. Felt a little bit better this week than it has in previous weeks. All right. And lastly, I will say tight end is definitely actually there's 2 more things. Tight end is definitely one position that we're going to keep a close eye on. I do expect the Chargers to roster at least 3 or 4 of them, and it's going to be tight. I have no idea who the 4th guy is going to be if we decide to go in that direction. It's going to be an important position for Jim Harbaugh, and it's one that's going to be very vital to, again, other aspects of our run game. And one guy that I think has a pretty good step ahead of the other guys is going to be Tucker Fisk, the newly signed tight end out of Atlanta. He's likely going to be playing a bit of fullback for this team, and it seems like a position that the Chargers are getting a little cheeky with, right? A couple of weeks ago, when I was at training camp, I noticed a lot of snaps going to Jordan McFadden, the guard. Justin Herbert was handing it off to him. I was like, what in the world is going on right now? And Jordan McFadden was being tested out as the Chargers' fullback option, which is awesome. Very creative. Haven't really seen anything like that in a long time. Patrick Ricard is another guy that converted from guard to fullback. Am I wrong? Either way, very cool experiment. And honestly, it looks like it was going to work. Then the Chargers bring in Tucker Fisk, who also has some nice upside at fullback. And you know what they did today? The Chargers lined up big defensive lineman Scott Matlock at fullback several times throughout the course. It feels like he was fullback one for this team for the entirety of this last preseason game. And it was awesome to see. He had this big, wrecking ball in front of a lot of the times it was Jarrett Patterson. And it feels like it worked. I'm sorry, but it looks not just fun, but like effective. And as a Chargers fan, that honestly, I've been wanting to see the fullback position more involved. Of course, you guys, if you watch my channel, you know that I loved Xander Horvath. He didn't last with the team. I loved Ben Mason. He didn't last with the team. This year, it might be coming down to, our backup tight end and Tucker Fisk, a guard in Jordan McFadden, and now a defensive lineman in Scott Matlock. How crazy of a world we live in, huh, Bull fam? Kind of insane. Now, what happened to the Rex guy we just signed, says Hugo. I don't know if I saw his number out there. At least I didn't even know what his number is, but he's likely going to be maybe a receiving option. So tight end, fullback, definitely interesting to see how that's shaping up. Chargers had a lot of fun this week on offense, and I do think that we got a nicer sample size this week to help the Chargers determine who's going to make the cut and who's likely going to be, shipped off somewhere else. So very exciting stuff, man. Congratulations to the Chargers offense. They were able to help themselves out by putting up a good number of points. Of course, the defense certainly helped this week, and that's what we're going to move on to this point now. Now, I did allude to it at the top of the episode. I would say not just the shining star of the Chargers this week, but maybe the player of the week overall in preseason, maybe the single best preseason performance of the entire preseason season goes to the man by the name of Tony Jefferson. Tony Jefferson, yes, that Tony Jefferson, formerly of the Baltimore Ravens, turned back the clock this week and turned into that Pro Bowl version of himself from far back when. This is a signing that got me excited. When it was announced, I was like, hey, man, we're going after these retired players that are still not done playing. Maybe he's got something left in the tank. He fits the system. He fits the culture, familiarity. Everything feels good about this signing. And then it turns into something that much more. Tony Jefferson logged 14 tackles, a sack, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble in this outing. Absolutely insane to think that kind of performance can come from a player at age 32. Unbelievable performance by him, and a position that the Chargers, at least by my speculation, are going to be taking very serious this season. You see, Jesse Minter in that defense, it's going to be allowing Derwin James to move around the field a lot more. But when he's moving around, you want somebody that you can trust playing in that backup safety role. And right now, it feels like Tony Jefferson is the guy. Right, is going to be the physical sort of safety that you're looking for. He's going to look good in coverage, of course, evident of 2 interceptions this week. It feels like a position they had to get right, and it feels like this signing was the right decision all along. Tony Jefferson, congratulations. He's going to definitely be talked about at NFL Network this week. A lot of highlights just from this one game alone from him in the preseason. This is certainly going to be one of the coolest signings by the Chargers in a while, and it comes via a retired player at age 32 going absolutely nuclear and bonkers in their last preseason effort of the season. I do fully expect him to make the 53. It would be crazy if he did not at this point. Now, the Chargers defense wasn't done just off the back of what Tony Jefferson was doing. This team logged, I think, 6 turnovers in this game versus a pretty competent backup quarterback in Trey Lance. Now, Lance did have himself a pretty decent week despite, a lot of the turnovers. If you take the turnovers away, Trey Lance logged 323 yards, a touchdown through the air, as well as pretty respectable rushing yards, too. 90 rushing yards and a touchdown on the ground, too. That's a combined, over 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. The problem with that, though, comes from what the defense was able to produce via some of his mistakes out there. 5 interceptions by Trey Lance is absurd. The Chargers defense and what Jesse Minter is cooking was absolutely on par today, man. It was such an awesome defensive performance, one that gives us a good look through the looking glass of what this defensive system and scheme could look like in the regular season, but also what it can produce in terms of opportunities for turnovers. 5 interceptions. I know we had the one fumble via Tony Jefferson. Insane to think that those are the kind of odds that we were going with a pretty capable backup quarterback like Trey Lance. Awesome results. And we know 2 of those came off the back of a Tony Jefferson. Where'd the other ones come from? I know there was one by Morris Brash, right? That one went all the way back for a pick 6. Very, very impressive. We had another one from Hankins at the very end there, man. That one sealed the game up. Chargers defense playing lights out. Super. And then Kennedy also logged one as well. The Chargers just very good at generating pressure and capitalizing on opportunity when they have the chance at coming down with an interception, something to help really put this one away, where the Chargers at one point, I felt like we're about to Charger the game away, and they did it. And that's such a big point of emphasis if you're a Chargers fan watching this post-game report. In years past, the Chargers, I don't care if it's a preseason game, I don't care if it's a regular season game, I don't care if it's a postseason game. The Chargers, when they had the lead, and the game starts looking the way it is, where, oh, here comes the Cowboys. The Chargers have a 2-possession league. Oh, here comes the turnover. Here comes whatever. Like, as soon as the momentum starts to swing back the other way, as a Chargers fan, I'm very used to that game being blown at the end. As a Chargers fan, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, hey, we're up 2-3 possessions. Maybe I'm starting to feel a little good about the game. At that point, things get turned on their heads, and so many games are lost after even a 2 or 3 point or 2 or 3 possession lead. Not this time. This is such an important moment. Yes, it's a preseason game. Yes, it doesn't really matter in the end, but it does, because we watched the Chargers avoid chargering for the first time in a long time. Is this a signal of things to come in terms of the Chargers' discipline to put away games? Is this a thing to foresee the future of what a Chargers team can look like that produces turnovers, not just when we need them, but also when we can use them to put a game away? Maybe. Is this what a Chargers offense could look like when you need to control the clock and not make dumb, redundant mistakes when it comes to coaching? Maybe. We did it, man. We, at least for this game, didn't Charger away the lead. And that could tell us something a little bit about what Jim Harbaugh and his team is trying to produce out there in Los Angeles and trying to create in terms of culture and discipline. Felt really good here, man. I don't know about you guys, Chargers fans, but I was ready to lose that game at the end. I was even telling my audience, like, hey, dude, I've already seen some cool stuff. Tony Jefferson's going crazy. It doesn't matter if we win this game. This game's already a dub for us. It's preseason, whatever. And then what we did was avoid charging at the end. It made me feel really good about it. So I don't know, man. This could be a tell of times, a tell of better times if you're a Chargers fan. It really was impressive. It really was impressive. Now, as for a little bit of the defensive competition that we're looking for, we did see a little bit of JT Woods on the outside playing corner. That's something to keep an eye out for during cut week. JT Woods playing perimeter, playing, as a 6'2", fast and physical and ball hawking kind of corner could actually be something for this team. You saw Junior Colson out there early in this game. He looked awesome in all facets, right? He looked good versus the run. He looked great in coverage. He looked great as a pass rusher. We got something in Junior Colson for sure. And I was so happy to see him get a little bit of playing time this week and really, help us out in terms of our confidence on him being a leader of this team in the future. We saw a little bit of Frank Ginda, one of the players of the year of either the USFL or the UFL. He made a couple of nice plays out there. We saw a lot of cool special teams. I don't know, man. This team that's been churned and this team that has seen a lot of movement in terms of signings over the past couple of weeks really did make me feel like Joe Ortiz knows what he's doing. And the team really has been using their resources appropriately. And the competition that came down to the wire in the last week of preseason was used appropriately. Like, it really did feel like the result was making this team better, not just throwing darts, blind in the dark. It felt like some of the signings that we made are actually going to make an impact in the year and help strengthen the backups and the second stringers for this team to really help the depth out going into the year. So I don't know, man. Very awesome performance by the Chargers. Offensively, we found our footing. Defensively, we dominated. even a Dallas Cowboys that's been pretty good this offseason. And we produced in terms of turnovers. If we can be that turnover team this year, watch out for the Chargers, man. If this formula that Jesse Minter has produced in terms of, like, let's go after him like crazy with edge pressure, let's get Bosa and Mack and Thule and Bud and all these guys in there and give our dudes, in terms of our secondary and linebackers, opportunities to create turnovers. If we create those opportunities and these guys are actually capitalizing like they did this week, watch out for the Chargers to be one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL in producing turnovers and creating more opportunities for their offense this year. And this year we probably kind of need it. I know Justin Herbert out there is going to change a lot of things in terms of the perspective of this offense, but you know what? It could never hurt to have another possession or two if you're the Chargers offense this year, a new Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, system. So I don't know, man, very exciting stuff out here, dude. Thank you everybody so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Congratulations to the Chargers logging their first win in a long time, even if it's the preseason. I know a lot of us were ready for it. And congratulations to Tony Jefferson, who in my opinion is going to end up being the player of the week and maybe even of all preseason, with one of the craziest performances I've seen from any individual defensive player, even again in preseason. Guys, again, we'll see you next time. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with the follow on Bleacher Report. We'll catch you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Hell of a game, Tony Jefferson. Hell